So this video is intended to be a very brief overview of FortiSASE, what it is, what are some very good use cases for it, along with a very quick flick through the user interface that an administrator would use to control the product. First of all, what is SASE? So SASE stands for Secure Access Service Edge. Putting all of that terminology and acronyms to one side, fundamentally, it's a FortiGate firewall or a cluster of FortiGate firewalls up in the cloud where you haven't got to worry about the patching and the day-to-day maintenance of them. That's all handled by Fortinet. You almost, not quite, but you just need to tell it your intent. And a lot of the complication is abstracted and hidden away behind the scenes. So that allows for your teams to go and focus on the stuff that matters, not the stuff that is easily automated, that Fortinet have gone and automated for you. That firewall in the cloud can have a series of potential use cases. Two really common ones that come to mind straight away is you may have a very remote workforce. You may have an entirely remote workforce with no real physical offices and a very cloud first mentality when it comes to your applications, your business users. Where that's the case, you're not going to have a big on-premise firewall where everybody is connecting back into. So what we need to look at that point is the security controls that would have been enforced by having those users connecting to your big secure firewall that monitors your traffic for indication of compromise, that may perform things like URL filtering, content control, application control. When you've got your users all over the country or potentially even all over the world, we need to look at how can we effectively secure the network traffic coming in and out of that endpoint. One of the most effective ways in that business model is to use some sort of SASE tooling. And this is where the secure access service edge, your edge being those endpoints. So what we're looking at here is we can, through the SASE platform, help deploy FortiClient out to all of those endpoints. We can then have those endpoints either manually or automatically connect up into the FortiSASE firewall. And from there, we can control what corporate resources they don't get access to. And we can, using that FortiClient, we can do a lot of zero trust access as well based on tags, just as you would with a normal FortiGate. The other use case where I find FortiSASE to be extremely powerful is where you have, a whole host of small sites all over the country, or again, maybe even all over the world, or a geographic area where it doesn't really justify putting a full-blown firewall into that site, but you do need to make sure the traffic coming in and out of that site is secured. What we can look to do there is we can put it may be something like a lightweight Forti extender, or it could be a FortiGate but without any sort of next-gen firewalling licensing into that site. And then we can connect that back up into the FortiSASE instance where we can actually perform all of that granular control and policing and monitoring, etc. It also makes the provisioning of that sort of site a lot easier. You've just got to put a nice simple box in, it will call up to the cloud, it will automatically tunnel all traffic up there for you. So those are two really good use cases for FortiSASE. We may also find it as well, we've had a customer recently where they're on that journey to become a sort of more of a cloud native company, but they're partway through that journey and they still have the on-premise data centers. Where that is the case, we do also have the ability to connect FortiSASE into that data center, and we can have the users that are connected to FortiSASE, either be it by sort of edge sites or FortiClient. We can then allow them to come down into that data center if required, and again we can do policing and control of that. So that's a very quick overview of FortiSASE and some of the things it can potentially do. I'm just going to take you very quickly through the administrator interface. So for awareness, this is an instance that we've literally have just spun up. It's a not for resale instance, so it's not one of our customers or anything like that. And I'll just start by working through the left hand side here. So to start off with, we've got the monitoring tab. The home page, the status page, is probably one of the best ones. It will show you things like the serial number, the amount of users connected, licensed, etc. It'll give you an overview of the bandwidth and roughly what's going on within the environment. There's then a series of other dashboards. These are going to have a very similar look, feel, layout to anything that you would find in the FortiOS product suite. So your FortiGates, your FortiAnalyzer, etc. Moving on from there, we've then got our operations tab. So as the name suggests, this is less general monitoring. This is more the sort of information your network operators are going to need. So this could be your service desk, this could be some more junior network engineers, or it could even be a more advanced network engineer when they're troubleshooting. It's going to give you a map of your assets. It's going to give you information about the infrastructure that you've got connected, the users that are connected. In the event that you're connecting the FortiAPs up into here, it will give you information about your wireless clients as well, and edge devices such as your Forti extenders, etc. We're also able to run scheduled reports in here or go and generate reports on the fly. So again, these could be really useful for sort of your SOC teams, your governance teams, etc., etc. As with any firewall, we're also able to come here and look at our traffic logs. So as we can see, there's also two key categories of logs here. We've got the all internet and private access traffic, as well as the internet access traffic. We can also go and see specific logs, and again, this is going to be very similar if you use the FortiGate for specific next generation firewall features. We can also go and look at key system events, as well as setting your settings for the logging instance as well. Moving on to the networking tab, we can then look at the DNS configuration. So this is more around the endpoints that are connecting up into SASE. How do you want them to process their DNS? So for example, do you want them to just recurse out to the internet, or potentially do you want to intercept some of that and send it to potentially your on-premise domain controllers, for example, Active Directory down the secure private access link? We're also able to do geofencing in here, so we can say, for example, your users should only ever be working from the UK or France. We can lock this down and say, look, only allow the UK or France to be able to connect up into our FortiSASE instance. You can also flip that on its head and go deny only and potentially list out some countries that you never want to be able to access or talk to your instance. In here, we're also able to look at the public IP that each of our POP instances will be presenting as. So for example, if I was to use my Forti client and connect to the London POP, I would be breaking out onto the internet using this IP address. If I was connecting up into the Paris one, I would be using this IP address here. These are not big secretive IP addresses. Here we're in a shared IP environment, so these are just general IP addresses used by FortiSASE. You do have the option, if you wish, to go and buy your own dedicated IP addresses from Fortinet, and then you raise a ticket and they will provision those onto the instance for you. BGP is obviously a key element of FortiSASE if you're using the secure private access links, and we're able to set that all up in here. Proxy, so again, this is potentially more of a common use case for sort of mobile devices, iPads, etc. We're able to set FortiSASE up as an authenticated proxy. We can do that against things like SAML and Entra ID. Have that agent automatically connect up and proxy all of its internet connections through the FortiSASE instance. When it comes to security, think firewall rules at this point. So when we look at the policies, these are the policies that allow let's say the remote sites, the Forti clients out to the internet. It also will control how and what can be communicated down the secure private access link to any sort of traditional data centers you may have. As with most Fortinet tools, you can then apply security profiles to that around things like antivirus, IPS, file filtering, DLP, etc. And you can define those here. Again, very familiar within the Fortinet security stack. We are then also able to do zero trust network access with tags, etc. When it comes to the resources, think security objects. So these are going to be, in this case, your hosts, your subnets, etc. It's going to be your services around, these TCP, UDP ports, etc. Should you use it, schedules, as well as potential external threat feeds that you may want to consume as part of that security policy. When it comes to endpoint management, think FortiEMS. The reality is FortiSASE behind the scenes is a FortiGate firewall and a FortiGate EMS instance. So one thing that does catch some customers out that you do need to be careful of, you cannot run FortiSASE and FortiEMS currently in the same cloud instance, and that is because behind the scenes this is a FortiEMS server. So similar to FortiEMS, we can have endpoint profiles where we group together various elements such as VPN settings. We can look at our on and off net rules to determine whether that client is already on your network and potentially has a slightly more relaxed profile, let's say, because you may be policing using on-premise firewalls. We can also look to group endpoints together, as well as some general settings that can be found in here as well. We can also look at posture tagging. So again, this is coming into our ZTNA piece, so we can tag the devices depending on certain criteria. And we can also look at the upgrades in here as well. When it comes to access and authentication, this is basically looking at your users, how you're going to identify your users and allow them in. So we're able to use things like users and groups, again, very similar to any other FortiGate product. We can then get authentication from a series of different sources. So that may be LDAP servers, you may be accessing those over the secure private access link. It may be they're exposed out to the internet, but naturally always tread carefully with that. Very similar use case with Radus and SSO. With the SSO in this case, most traditionally being doing against Entra ID, and we'll probably do a video on how to configure that at some point. We can also, however, use FortiGate single sign-on solutions if you have them, and we can come in here and define any domains as well. Under the system, we can, and again, I would always recommend this, require audit comments on configuration logs. The more you can self-document your configuration, the better. You can also look at the HTML response templates here. So, in the event in your security policy you are blocking or taking some sort of action, asking for the user to confirm they want to proceed, those templates are defined in here. We can also do API-based CASB as well, up into cloud, various SaaS applications. We can look at the certificates in here. Again, common use case here is if you're doing Entra ID sort of SAML or implementations. We can also get a view of the license, so we can see this here is an NFR subscription. It's almost like it was provisioned today because it expires in exactly 12 months. And it will give us an overview of the amount of connected users. And then finally, we've got snapshot in here, which will return the instance back if required, your sort of factory reset, so to speak. That's a very brief overview of the FortiSASE product. Again, very, very good product. We'll try and get some more videos showing you how to configure some of the basics, and if you've got any questions about the product, please do reach out. We're here to help. Fantastic. Thank you very much.